I will tell you our story. Remember this, we are the lucky ones. We are not camp victims. We are simply Holocaust victims driven out by Hitler, and we found asylum here in Scotland. So our story is difficult but positive. That's what it's all about. We are, please bear with us, we are old people, we are like your great-grandparents, we're both 93 years of age. We came here 70 or 80 years ago, we came here in 1939, and we found our place in Scotland, and we're happy to be here. So let me tell you, my name is Henry Wugga. I'm born in 1924 in Nuremberg, a town in Germany, in Bavaria, a very notorious town, the town where Hitler held all his rallies. There were hundreds of thousands of people marching with swastikas and flags. It was pretty tough. Also in that town, Nuremberg, we had the local Nazi boss by the name of I can't forget his name, Streicher, Julius Streicher. He published a very anti-Semitic newspaper called The Stürmer, Der Stürmer. Anyway, we grew up. I grew up. I'm an only child. My father had a small business about typewriters and things like that. And I grew up perfectly normally until 1933 when Hitler came to power. Immediately things changed. Then by 1935, they promulgated the Nuremberg Laws, the horrendously anti-Semitic laws. You became a nobody. You lost your citizenship. You were just not counted anymore. It was quite horrendous. First of all, your parents lost their income. Under these Nuremberg laws, Jews were only to deal with other Jews. So if you were a shopkeeper and you had 1,000 customers, but only 10 of them were Jews, that's what you were left with. If you were a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, you could only teach Jewish people. So the whole thing shrunk, your income shrank. It was a horrible time. So in the local school I went to in Nuremberg, we were sitting about maybe 20 pupils. I'm talking at the age of about 8 or 9. And the minute the Nazis came to power, 1935, it was horrendous. We were sat at the back. The three of us, there were 3 Jewish boys in the class. We were sat at the back. Nobody would speak to us. Neither the teachers nor the pupils. And you thought you had friends among a group of children. Some of them are your friends. But why did they not speak to you? They were afraid. Have nothing to do with Jews. Their parents might lose their job. They might not get advancement. So we were completely and utterly isolated. It was horrendous. I don't want to shock you, but we're sitting in class and they're singing little songs, funny little ditties. But this was too near the bone. 2 Jews bathed in a water hollow. One quickly drowned. We hope the other one will follow. Now just think of that. They're singing that into your face. Friends you had in the class where you were. I mean, it was absolutely horrendous. Fortunately, Nuremberg has a twin town, Fürth, like Glasgow and Paisley. like Glasgow and Paisley. There was a Jewish grammar school in Fürth, and I went to the Jewish grammar school, and I got a fairly reasonable education. So at least we were out of the mainstream. But you were not allowed to go to the cinema, to go to the theater. You were not allowed to go to a public meeting. You just kept yourself amongst yourself. It was a pretty tough time to grow up. And not only that, we realized right from the beginning, we cannot stay in this country. We will have to leave this country. There's no question about it. On that premise, my mother, who was very courageous, she said to me, "You're going to leave school." Let me tell you, I was perfectly happy at school. So, but my mother said, "Look here, you will need to learn a trade. We will have to emigrate. And when you go somewhere else to another country, you will have to earn a living." So at the age of 14, I was taken out of school, sent to Baden-Baden in the Black Forest, a very famous spa, and I worked there as an apprentice at a Jewish hotel for 6 months. I learned a lot. You were young. You know yourself. You are at the age of 16. You do, if you learn something, you absorb it fairly quickly. So I was very fortunate. Worked there. That's how things were. You get a job, but my parents had to pay for me to become an apprentice. Anyway, I worked there for 6 months. It was wonderful. Then came Crystal Night, the 9th and 10th of November. I don't know if you know what Kristallnacht, Crystal Night is. Obviously, I will go into that. Under all these anti-Semitic laws, in Paris, a young Polish Jewish boy, there were people, Polish Jews had come to Germany, yes, to live there. And Hitler expelled them all in 1938. This young boy was in Paris. He was so upset about this, his parents being expelled, that he shot a German diplomat in Paris. Hitler and Goebbels used this idea: the German nation rose up against the Jews. Now, this was well prepared, because nothing like this can happen in 2 nights. In 2 nights, 9th and 10th of November 1938, every synagogue was set alight. 1,000 synagogues all over Germany. All the shops were smashed up. All the businesses were smashed up. They came to your house. They smashed your windows. They upset your furniture. They ripped open your downies. Everything was flying full with feathers. It was quite horrendous. The men were taken to concentration camp. It was really, I remember, it was horrendous. Obviously, we didn't. What can you do? You knew this was the end. We have to get out of here. Crystal Night was horrendous. The men were all taken to concentration camp, but they were only kept for 6 weeks. But they were told, find somewhere to go, or you will be sent to another camp again. So people tried to emigrate, to go to other countries. But who would let you in? Now, this is the big question. We are now in 2018, and I would like to tell you, things have not changed. You see thousands of refugees fleeing from Africa, fleeing from Turkey, crossing the Mediterranean and unfortunately drowning, looking for somewhere to live. People were on the move. People are on the move. It is quite horrendous. So how could we get out of Germany? Who would let you in? Nobody would let you in. Why would they not let you in? Nobody wants refugees. Nobody wants asylum seekers. Nothing has changed. What happened to us? We came here by Kindertransport. I mean, separately, we didn't know each other, obviously, in Germany. Kindertransport was a wonderful organization. The Jewish community collected money and asked, can we at least save the children? They went to the government. See, we've collected money. Can we at least save the children? They went to the Home Secretary, who was Sir Samuel Hoare. Now, he was a Quaker. You know what Quakers are. Quaker is a Christian society. They don't go to church. They have their own meeting house. But they have a more liberal outlook. So this committee said to this Home Secretary, we have collected money. Could we at least save the children? This Home Secretary replied, if you have got the money, we will not put any obstacles in your way. Now, this is why we are here. This saved our life. This went to the House of Commons. It went to the Commons, and within 3 weeks, it was pushed through, and we were allowed to come to this country as single children. Now, this I'll tell you, this would not happen today. Let us assume you ask the government, ask the Home Secretary, Amber, could we change the curtains in this hall to pink? What would she say? She should say, there will be an inquiry. It'll take months, it will never happen. This government in 1938 acted within 3 weeks. It went through the Houses of Parliament, and lo and behold, Kindertransport got on its feet. So what did you have to do? We had to, the government allowed single Jewish children from Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Germany to come to this country unaccompanied, on the condition that they have a guarantor. So people looked for guarantors. People went to, could you take a child? Now, to take a child is very nice. Obviously, you want to take a child. You want to be helpful. But to take a child, you had to clothe the child, dress the child, educate the child, and feed the child. So that was a lot of money. That was very difficult for people to do. We found many guarantors. Some of us did not find guarantors, but we were taken in nevertheless and looked after here at certain places. So for people to sponsor a child was horrendously expensive. Not only that, they had to deposit 50 pounds. I don't know if it means anything to you. In 1938, 50 pounds was a lot of money. But the train started to roll. Between December 1938 and the outbreak of war, about 9,800 Jewish children came to this country. You were taken by your parents to the railway station, not knowing whether you will ever see your parents again. Of these 9,000 children, only about 30% ever saw their parents or their siblings again. You were put on the train. Your mother and father sent you away to a foreign country to whom you didn't know the language. I mean, even the idea of giving your child away was quite traumatic, but it saved our lives. The journey was horrendous. I remember having been away from home at the age of 14. I could deal with this. I was now 16 years of age, 15 and a half. I could deal with this. But beside me in that train, about 100 children, there were 6, 7, and 8-year-olds who had never been away from their mom and dad before. I mean, they didn't cry, they howled. It was horrendous. We were taken on the train with a little case. That's all you could take, what you could carry. You can imagine, the train left for the first 6 hours till we got to the Dutch frontier. The howling was unheard of, horrible, traumatic. Once we crossed the Dutch frontier, all of a sudden, this pressure lifted, even from the younger children it lifted. Unbelievable, even 8-year-olds all of a sudden stopped crying. At the station in Holland, there were ladies with hot chocolate and apples and white sandwiches, and it was fantastic. We already felt better. So the train went through Holland, to Hook of Holland. Then we boarded Channel Ferry, coming from the center of Europe. I've never been to the sea before. We crossed the channel by night. We arrived in Harwich in Essex, and we took a train to Liverpool Street Station. Liverpool Street Station, again a railway station in 1938, was a bit of a black hole. We were in an underground space. We were sitting there waiting to be collected. Now remember, these are kids. We were in the train, must have been a day and a half. You were traumatized, you were hungry, and you were sitting waiting to be collected. People came, we will take a child, and people came and collected children they had guaranteed for. Other people came, believe it or not, it was a bit like a cattle market. There you are, 2. We take this one, we don't want the other one, yeah? So siblings were split up. It was really horrendous. People came to look and saw a child they liked and took it, but it saved our lives. I was very fortunate. I was with other 3 kids, other 3 Jewish children. We stayed in London overnight in some hostel. We had nobody to collect us. I had a guarantor in Glasgow. A very nice Jewish lady, Mrs. Harwich in Glasgow. She must have been in her late 60s or 70. Took me in as a 15-and-a-half-year-old boy. Okay, next morning we were taken to traumatized as we were, but nevertheless, we're now here. Couldn't speak much English. We were taken to Euston Station, and by the Flying Scotsman, Euston Station to Glasgow Central. I had traveled many times before in Germany in a train on wooden seats, but this was the Flying Scotsman. Wow, upholstered compartments, fantastic. Not only that, we were taken to the dining car. I'd never been in a dining car before, so remember. So you arrive in a strange country, you're taken to a dining car. Believe it or not, the waiters in 1938 in the dining car wore white cotton gloves. We were given chocolate, so we thought we'd arrived in paradise, yeah? It wasn't quite like that, but it was, I will not forget that journey. I mean, all of a sudden we're in some civilized sort of place. I came to Glasgow. This lady took me in. Her family had grown up. I lived in Queen's Drive. I was one of the fortunate ones. I was immediately sent to school, went to Queen's Park School. I was taken on a holiday by the Sassoons to Kakubri. I'd never seen the sea before, so I came here. It was fantastic. I mean, wow. All of a sudden, you're a human being here. It was marvelous. Then, of course, war broke out. War broke out. What on earth happens now? You have no communication at all with your parent, no telephone, nothing. So what did we do? It was horrendous when war breaks out, really. Here you are now in a foreign country. Will you ever see your people again? What can I tell you? Belgium did not enter the war for the first 6 months. And I had an uncle in Belgium who had fled the Nazis and lived in Brussels. So I sent letters to my uncle and aunt in Brussels, who sent them to my mother and father, who sent it back to Brussels, back to Glasgow. This went on for 2 months. It was wartime. I was arrested, taken to the High Court in Edinburgh. Yeah, may I tell you, we came here as friendly enemy aliens due to religious persecution. Okay? I was taken to the High Court in Edinburgh at the age of 16, and within half an hour, I became a dangerous enemy alien category A due to corresponding with the enemy. I mean, don't laugh, but it's a serious offense in wartime. They had no idea what to do with me. They took me to a remand home. They then took me to Maryhill Barracks, where I was for 3 or 4 weeks with German seamen who were also there. So a Jewish boy with 30 German seamen was not a happy time for me, but you had to overcome it. You got on with it. Then we were sent to Donaldson School in Edinburgh, which became a camp, and then internment happened. Now, I don't know if you know about internment. Just before Dunkirk, Winston Churchill in cabinet, he banged the table. He said, "Collar the lot." These were his very words. And all friendly enemy aliens were interned. There were about 300,000. Men, women were very few women, but men, all grown-up people, they were all interned. Why were they interned? Because, again, I'm sorry to say that, 2018, nothing has changed. The tabloid press, yeah? The Sun and Mirror, I mean, we don't need refugees. Send them home. The pressure was such for Churchill that he got so fed up, he said, just lock them all up. At least it'll shut up the press. So we were locked up on the Isle of Man. I was in various different camps. Eventually I went to the Isle of Man. I was there for 10 months till I was released. Now can you imagine a 16-year-old kid interned with all Austrian German refugees of a reasonable high educational standard. Many of these internees were professors, were teachers, became Nobel Prize winners in the end. I mean, we were surrounded. We had a lot of music, the Amadeus Quartet, Ravitch and Landauer. The camp was a lively place. We were not starved, except one camp was bad. We were well looked after. So I was amongst these people. They were bored out of their minds. I had no siblings. I had nobody to write to. We had 1 letter a week. I'll show you the form afterwards, on sort of glossy paper that you can't wrap things out. My letter, believe it or not, we are locked up in a camp behind barbed wire, but we are upset. Why do you lock up? You need us to fight the war. We are the anti-Nazis. We are not, just because we come from a different country, but you need us. So my letters were used to write to a fellow MP, the MP for refugees, Eleanor Rathbone, many years ago, Manchester Guardian. So my letter was used. We wrote, please let us out of this camp. You need us for the war effort. You must help us. And my letters were read out in the House of Commons at Prime Minister's Question Time. So you're in a camp behind barbed wire, in a foreign country, because all of a sudden you're an enemy, but you have an outlet of your thoughts, and you felt this is a very democratic country to come to. So then I came out of camp. I came back to Glasgow. I was sent back to Glasgow. I was released, wartime. During the camp, I went to other tribunals to see if I really was a spy, and they decided I was not a spy. But then the commandant said to me, I'm sorry, Henry, you cannot stay a day longer. You're under 18, and you're not allowed to be interned under 18. So that's such is the story, such is bureaucracy. So I came home to Glasgow and started working again in the catering industry. I became a chef in various hotels and restaurants. So you understand, this is a positive story. We found a haven here. We were accepted. Okay, there are problems in every country. You're a refugee, you speak a foreign language, you tried not to speak German during the war, but we were accepted. People held out a hand to us, so we settled in Scotland and became part of the community. This is the positive side of that story. I let you tell Ingrid. You come to my microphone. Come, you tell them about your father being taken to concentration camp.
Good morning, everybody. I went to a Jewish school. I lived also in Germany, and it wasn't easy. I went to a Jewish school, so I was not pushed aside like, you're a Jew, you're nobody. It was terrible to be looked down upon. I always say, I'm just like you, young people, and I would like to join. So anyway, my parents sent me to a Jewish school where I didn't have any problems. I was just one of the others. And but my father was going to be arrested. All of a sudden they came to our house. Where's Mr. Wolf? Mr. Wolf's not here. He's supposed to be here, and we want to arrest him. It was a very frightening time for all of us, because you were never sure, would you see tomorrow, or would you be in a concentration camp? And that was frightening, quite frightening. We realized that there was no future for us in Germany. Just because you have a different religion doesn't mean to say you're a bad person. I always say, somebody said he's Jewish or he's Catholic. Doesn't matter. Is it a nice person? Then I'll talk to them. Otherwise it doesn't matter. Also somebody said, oh, he's black. So what? He may be black, but he's a nice person. There's a white person next to him, and he's not nice. So I'll rather have the black one. Anyway.
Talking about the Polish girl, how you
Yes. To help a Polish girl, the parents were Polish, and she grew up in a small town beside us, and she wanted to go to the Jewish school that I attended. So my parents were approached, would they take in this Polish girl that she could go to the Jewish school that I attended? And my parents said, yes, of course. So the girl, just on paper, was written that she came to live in our house and went to the Jewish school that I attended. So one night, of course, and they always came at night, knock on the door, we want the Polish girl, because all the Poles were being sent back to Poland. And my father said, the Polish girl's not here. Believe it, we are going to look at your house, your flat, and see if the Polish girl is hiding somewhere. Of course, then they came to my bedroom. There she is, we'll take her. And my father said, that's not the Polish girl, that's my daughter. Oh, believe it if you like. My father had to show my birth certificate that I was actually the daughter of the house. There were always frightening things that happened. But I survived it and I'm here today. So thank you for listening.
Ingrid did not have it so easily. I was lucky. I was sent to school. The people that guaranteed for Ingrid in Archbishop in Leicestershire, they were very kind to her, but they sent her out to work. So at 15 and a half, she became a working girl, yes, looking after babies. So, but it saved her life, and we're here, and fine. So I came back to Glasgow. I started in restaurants, my trade that I had learned. But let me tell you, while I was in the Isle of Man, the last few weeks, I got a new roommate. And I only found that out 10 years ago. I said, did they really suspect my letters to be used for illegal purposes? And I was. I got an MI5 agent, and I wrote to the National Archives. I said, did they really suspect me? Oh yes, we've got stuff on you here which cannot be released for another 20 years. I got it eventually through Information Act. I was really under MI5. Can you imagine? At the age of 16, MI5 looks after you, see what you want to do. But we survived it, and I've got all that stuff. I knew all that stuff. So what did we do here in Glasgow? We joined the Refugee Club. This is where I met Ingrid in the Refugee Club in Sophie Hall Street. We were very politically active. We were fighting for a second front. We wanted this war to end, and we did what we could. We went all over Scotland singing for Mrs. Churchill's Aid to Russia Fund to raise funds for a second front. And Ingrid's very lucky. Her parents came to this country as domestic service. Now just imagine, your parents, let's assume your parents are teachers, yes? Your father and mother is a teacher. They have to flee to another country. How can they go? They go as domestic, as a butler and maid. So a middle-class couple starting again at the bottom at the age of 50 is not easy, but it saved their lives. And because Ingrid has parents here, we got married very young. We got married at 20. I had a family to go into, which was very good. I was not so lucky. My dad perished during the war, died. My grandmother perished, was murdered in Terezin, in Theresienstadt. My mother was hidden. By Catholic friends in a village and survived the war. And after the war, we brought her over here. It took 2 years to get permission from the Home Office. We brought her here and she lived with us. And then she went to America and came back and died in Glasgow eventually. So we have a positive story, yeah? It was marvelous. And what did we do? We found it. Ingrid was working, making uniforms in a factory for soldiers' or policemen's uniforms. Why did I not do any war work? You couldn't, I wanted to join the Merchant Navy. There's certain things you couldn't do as an enemy alien. And I mean, it's a crazy story, but so that's such is life. I went to the labor exchange, in these days known as the Bureau. I don't know if it means to anything. The word Bureau, the labor exchange we call it, go to the Bureau. I'd go to the Bureau, I would like to do war work. I would like to make ammunition in Hillington. Behind the counter is a guy, maybe 2 years older than I was, maybe he was 18 or 19. He looked at me, he said, Specky, you're going nowhere. I said, what do you mean? Any application I made, whatever, he tore it up and threw it in the paper basket. He said, we also need people to cook for the public. Now, maybe he had a point. So I spent the war in Glasgow, cooking in various hotels and restaurants. And fine, we got married and we settled happily in Glasgow. Eventually we had a catering business, and after we came to retire, remember, we've been retired for 30 years already. I mean, we're that ancient. But you try to give something back to the country that helped you. We worked for the Prince and Princess of Wales Hospice. We worked for all sorts of charities, and we are a skiing family. So I was chief ski instructor for British Limbers Ex-Servicemen's Association. So for 25 years, I skied with soldiers who had lost limbs. Ingrid did, and we skied with Blesma, which was fantastic to us. And for this, I got an MBE from Her Majesty the Queen at the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh. So you start here as a refugee, you come here with 10 shillings in your pocket, with 8 shillings, didn't matter. And you're accepted in the country, you're not persecuted. Whether you're a Jew or whatever, you can make a living here, and you work hard and you prosper, and you end up with an honor from Her Majesty the Queen. So it's a good story from my point of view. May I just say this, on this table, I mean, there are too many of you, but on this table are various things. Letters that got me into jail, my mother's Jewish star. I mean, everybody had to wear that on their coat. There are all sorts of things on that table. Our German passports, our old German passports, not only, I mean, this is how nasty these Nazis were. Not only did you have to change your name, Ingrid Wolf became Ingrid Sarah Wolf. Heinz Wugga became Heinz Israel Wugga, and then they put a red J in your passport. So that they know who you are, yeah? I mean, it was pretty grim, and we've escaped all that. So I wish to apologize. I did not want to sit up there. I don't want to sit above you. I thought I'd rather come down here and be amongst you. I'm sorry to cause all the disturbance, but that's what we felt. And may I just say, I would like you to ask lots of questions, but may I just say, we're still in the week of Robert Burns, yeah? This famous poet, and just think of a man's a man for all that. Just think of that in connection with the Holocaust. Thank you very much. How do I feel? I'm very happy to be in Scotland. We were accepted. I mean, I went to school as a foreign boy, could hardly speak English, but nobody in Mill mistreated me. I went to school in Perthshire at a junior secondary school. The headmaster looked after me, and I found it very good in this country to be accepted. English is, please don't misunderstand me. It's not simple, on the contrary. English has 30,000 words, I mean, an impossible language, but what you and I use in everyday language, 3,000 or 4,000 words, and the grammar is easier. There is no gender to start with. So to learn English, if you pay attention, is reasonably easy to become fluent in everyday English. The Kindertransport was a very traumatic affair. Ingrid can tell you the same. It's just horrendous. Just imagine being taken away from your parents. Most of these children had never been away from home before. You're put in a train, and you don't know whether where you're going.
Do you ever see them again?
And you don't know whether you'll ever see them again. But we are lucky, we did. My most powerful memory, I think, was Crystal Night, yeah? The smashing up of your house, of burning the synagogues, of taking people to concentration camps. November 1938 was too traumatic to forget. The people in general were, I mean, you're a foreigner here, and war has broken out, but nobody accosted us in the street. We certainly didn't speak German. The people that looked after me, Mrs. Herrick, was fantastic. To take in a 15-and-a-half-year-old boy when you're already nearing 70 is not easy, but fantastic. Her son, I remember her son stayed still in the house. He was grown up, but I went to school and I met other young people, and then we met other refugees. You know, refugees, you try to stick together, and we founded a Refugee Club in Sukhirotse to be politically active to get the war finished. You have to accept it. Things are certainly different. obviously things are different. But you learn the language, and we brought culture with us quite differently. For example, just having arrived here in Perth, that in that junior secondary school, we did Macbeth. Now, what the hell did I know? Pardon me. What did I know about Shakespeare? Goethe and Schiller, Shakespeare, never heard of. Nevertheless, we did Macbeth, and it grabbed me to such an extent, this foreign language, this powerful story, that I took to it very much, that to this day I can quote you quite a few passages of Macbeth free. Out, please, candle, life is but a walking shadow, etc., etc. So can you see what kind of impact that had on me, even not being able to speak complete English, how powerful that was, that remained with me. So I took on, obviously, getting to know Macbeth and that story in Scotland. It was very historic. Let me tell you, we went, I know, these are little stories. For years we went skiing with our children and grandchildren to Muga, and driving up from Glasgow. When we passed Dunkeld, the children were asked, where are we? When Birnam Wood moved on to Dunsinane, I don't know if it means anything to you, I would suggest you look in Macbeth and read it up. Birnam Wood, this was the first time Shakespeare used it. Nowadays you use camouflage gear. In these days, they cut branches, hit themselves on the branches, and attacked the enemy. In other words, the whole wood moved. And in Macbeth, when Birnam Wood moved on to Dunsinane, look it up, you'll see it's a wonderful story. At what age do we understand what happened to us in Germany? At a young age? That came very early on. The minute you're in a country, now can you imagine, here in Kilmarnock, everybody that goes to this school, Kilmarnock Academy, will not be talked to, will be sidelined. You are not to go to the pictures, you're not to go to a public meeting, you're not to go to a concert, you're not to go to a football match, you don't exist anymore. So even very young on, this you feel that, and this stays with you the whole time. You know from very early on, and the way your parents talked about it, the threat of having to leave and being subjugated like that came very early on. When did we realize the scale of the Holocaust? Well, we had an idea. We knew there were concentration camps. I mean, her father was in one. We knew that, yes, but we did not, nobody knew the horror that really happened, that came out later. Not till Bergen-Belsen, when the British Army liberated Bergen-Belsen, did people realize how horrendous this really was. I mean, thousands of people. Look, to me, the horrible thing is about the Holocaust. The German government finally said the final solution. They want to get rid of a whole lot of people. So you sit around a cabinet table and you decide, and you make a decision. Everybody in Kilmarnock will be sent to a camp. We shall make camps, we get barbed wire, we get gas canisters, we have buildings, we will gas them to death, and then we will burn their bodies. Just think of that. This is just too horrendous to think of. But that is exactly what happened. And that was a decision taken by our government. I was fortunate, my aunts and uncles emigrated before. My mother survived the war in Germany. My grandmother did not. She ended up in Terezin and was murdered there. Ingrid lost 15 cousins and uncles and aunt in Auschwitz, with one survivor, one young man survived. He survived Auschwitz. He was about 18. He was strong and powerful. He was a butcher's son, and he ate potato peelings. And anybody needed a volunteer for something, he said, "I can do it." He literally survived it by willpower. Well, we knew we had to leave, so it wasn't. We accepted it. Yeah. The problem is, I didn't know. I didn't really know where Scotland was. I knew it was far north, but okay. Let me tell you one other thing. It's crazy, but this is life. I knew I had to go. I knew I had to go by Kindertransport. But remember, we had a big family who had fled Hitler. So I had a cousin in Paris. So I said, when I go by Kindertransport, why must I go on this train? Why can't I go to Paris and stay there a week and then go on this train? It wasn't, I mean, you know, a young boy having ideas, but it wasn't like that.